Okay, so training methods. In this particular section, what I want to discuss is what is the effect that training has on the body. There are two effects. So in a longer term, what we're seeking is to get the lower heart rate for a specific session or specific intensity because of long-term adaptations. Increase in the heart size, increase in stroke volume, better absorption of oxygen. And in the short term, we actually will see most probably higher heart rate or heart rate jumping up and down or changing slowly. That's called heart rate variability, which we'll talk more in the last section. So those those effects are covered by essentially this question: why my heart rate varies in a similar session. And that is because there are different adaptations, as mentioned, happening on our body on a daily basis. And all of that comes from first of all, different training sessions that we can do. So we have the heart rate zones, and based on that Karmanen formula, the heart rate zones come as a range. So one range is 50 to 60%, another range is 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, 90 to 100. And actually what you can do is, I have a calculator on my blog. I will show you. I will also send it in the link afterwards. If you scroll down at the bottom of the page, there is a link on heart rate zone calculator, or if you go under heart rate training, at the top there is also a link here into heart rate zone calculator, and it uses that heart rate Karmanen formula to estimate your zones, as I mentioned. So you put your resting heart rate. My resting heart rate is 45. You put your maximum heart rate. If you know it, I know mine is 195. If I wouldn't know it, I can estimate it with the formula. And then after I press calculate, it adds the heart rate here based on that Karmanen formula, as I mentioned. So zone 2, it calculates 120 to 120 to 135. Then now the zone 2 for me would be 135 to 150, 150 to 165, 165 to 180, 180, 195. Based on my experience, I know that my zone 2 is slightly lower. It's actually somewhere around 130 to 145, so my zones are a little bit adjusted. But again, the question is by, I don't know, 3 to 5 bits. It's not groundbreaking difference. So once we calculate those zones, we essentially know where exercising at each particular zone places us, and there are different types of intensities that we can do in a training session. For example, we can, as mentioned, we can have a recovery or warm-up effort, we can have an easy session, but then there are different we have a tempo, sweet spot, threshold, VO2 max, sustained sprint, and a lactic sprint. And I have I have prepared a ebook actually where I have this slide and many more slides that discuss all of these sessions in particular. I will also send the link to that ebook as well if you're interested in. But basically what I want to discuss in this particular pillar is how exercise intensity spread across different sessions, because it's not only about getting out and pushing yourself to do something that you haven't done before, or just kind of pushing yourself forward. What we're looking for is making every session as targeted as possible, and thinking from a perspective not that I want to go out and exercise, but rather what do I want to achieve. So I need to build an aerobic base. Okay, then it means that throughout the next couple of weeks, I would need to do a lot of training sessions at an easy effort, meaning upper zone 1 to mid to high zone 2 in order to build that aerobic base. Next, as we discussed in the where was that beautiful picture that I made here? So as I start my training process, for example, for the year ahead, I need to build base fitness. So I need to do a lot of zone 1, zone 2 training, and at the same time, I need to do some neuromuscular power. I need to do some sprints in order to activate more muscle fibers and teach the body to utilize more muscle fibers. Then as I'm done with these base periods, I can go into building my aerobic capacity and build up and threshold power. And as you can see here, these are the zones 2, 3, 4, and a little bit of 5. So again, I select from here. So when I start building aerobic capacity, I, for instance, do slightly more tempo sessions, or I do an occasional sweet spot session because it's still kind of under that mid zone 4. It's generally in zone 3. And as I get into building power, I actually use the sessions that trigger that. And those are the sessions towards the higher end of zone 4. So maybe more intense sweet spot session or a more intense or general threshold session. And if I would be training, for example, for a 5K or a 10K, which is or for a race that is, I don't know, less than 30-40 minutes long, then I would also include the VO2 max and a little bit of sustained sprint in there. So that's how kind of how you would think about including these different training sessions into your kind of daily and weekly plan. Again, because not every session triggers the same type of adaptation, and every session requires actually different amount of time to be fully absorbing. So every session requires a different time to be fully absorbed. And I have here a snapshot again from that ebook that I prepared. I have here all of the different sessions, and I split them basically into two parts. One is the supportive session or easy session, and one is a key session. Key sessions are typically kind of longer and harder ones, which requires more time to recover from. And supportive ones, you typically can do them every day or even use them as a recovery session. For example, if it's a cross training or a zone 1 recovery session. And again, easy sessions, they stimulate mitochondria growth, same as cross training, but for different muscles. Recovery just promotes the blood flow to speed up all of the adaptation processes. Then we have to develop a neuromuscular power top end session, and then we go into harder ones like the long one, where we really stimulate that mitochondria grow further. Fartlek, it's kind of faster or an initial speed session. Then we have a strength focused where we work against resistance. And then, as I mentioned already, tempo, sweet spot, threshold, VO2 max effort. That's what we basically use as training tools to target specific adaptations based on what we need for each particular race. And behind every one of these sessions, as mentioned, there is a certain intensity zone which correlates to a certain heart rate, which we can use to make sure that the intensity of the exercise that we are doing is dialed in. And with that, basically, we can use any program that there is. We can even download a free program, and with that knowledge, we can utilize that free program and kind of adapt it for our own needs. Yeah, typical week can depends on how much time a person has to devote to training. I personally like for my athletes to have at least 1 day per week off. Depending on the level of an athlete, it can be even 2 or in some cases 3 days off. But I always try to push to kind of move an athlete to a place where he or she exercises frequently, at least 5 times per week, ideally 6 times per week. Because when you do that, when you sort of are forced to exercise every day, you cannot take each session too hard. It means you're forced to slow down and you're forced to spend more time in the easy zone, and with that develop your aerobic base, develop mitochondria, and prepare yourself for a more intense work ahead. And when we talk about combining the sessions together, there are a few, rules of thumb is that if we talk about a very hard session or a very long one, for example, it can be a VO2 max session or a particularly harder long threshold or sweet spot session. For that, we would need 72 hours of rest or easy training. Here I put easy because of what I just said. I try to encourage athletes to train 5 or 6 times per week, but within those 5 or 6 times, only maybe 2 or maximum 3 sessions would be key sessions, would be really hard. The rest of the sessions would be just to get out there, promote the blood flow, and maybe kind of develop some mitochondria. But generally, there would be very few hard sessions. So again, very hard, very long, roughly 72 hours of rest, which means if you do a VO2 max session on Monday, then the next harder session most probably would be on Thursday, or maybe on Wednesday, to have 2 days, at least 2 days in between. Hard session, typically 48 hours. Oh, sorry, here under very hard, very long, this is what I think about if on Sunday a person goes for a 2-hour run, and within that 2-hour run there is like a 1 hour or 1 hour 15 at marathon pace. That's a really hard session, and for that I wouldn't plan anything harder up until Wednesday. Hard, this would be your threshold session, sweet spot session, maybe even your 2 max session. For that, 2 days in between. And for an easy session, you can essentially do an easy session every day. It's best to have 1 day off per week, and also to make the training plan a little bit more easier to navigate. It's also nice to have 1 day per week of strength or cross training. But that's basically what I would look for when I plan and combine training session. And basically what you can recover from within 2-3 days of rest or easy session, and then show the same performance or the same speed or anything, that would be your load on hard days. And what you recover from within a single day, that would be your training load on easy days. So so that you can pace a little bit yourself and understand.